All right, we are in Isaiah chapter 36. God willing, we're going to get through the whole thing. We really need to because this is a good time for this message, actually. Oddly enough, though, let's start with verses 1 and 2. Just verses 1 and 2, if somebody could read them.
I can do that.
Okay.
Now it came to pass in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, am I in the right place?
Yep.
That, I don't know how to pronounce that king's name.
That's okay. Do your best and keep going.
Okay. Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and took them. And then the king of Assyria sent the Rabshakeh
Sure.
with a great army from,
Lachish?
Lachish to King Hezekiah at Jerusalem, and he stood by the aqueduct from the upper pool on the highway to Fuller's Field.
All right. So that's our opening for this chapter. This is the culmination of everything up to this point. We are closing out this part of Isaiah, and this is the historical crisis we are finally reaching. We've been talking about it for weeks. It's coming. It's basically finally here. Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, has now come into the north part of Judah and actually south of Jerusalem as well. He sort of surrounded Jerusalem in the sense that he took out all of the garrisons, all the fortified cities, all the places where they had armies and local militias ready to defend, the things that were supposed to block armies on the way to Jerusalem or on the way through to Egypt. They're all gone now. He took them all. All that's left, militarily speaking, is Jerusalem at this point. And the king. Hezekiah is sitting there with what's left of his army in the last city with walls that he controls in Judah. It's a bad time, because there are a lot of walled cities in Judah, and they've all been taken by the enemy now, basically. So, yeah, it says, all the fortified cities of Judah. That's bad. And so the king of Assyria sent, and in ESV, I think it says the Rabshakeh. It's a title. The Rabshakeh from Lachish to King Hezekiah with a great army. Let's flip to another passage real quick. We're going to get a little bit bigger of a picture. 2 Kings chapter 18. Not everybody needs to turn there necessarily, but if somebody could and read a few verses from 2 Kings 18. I'm thinking verses 13 through 17.
In the 14th year, King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and took them. And Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria at Lachish and saying, I have done wrong. Withdraw from me. Whatever you impose on me, I will bear. And the king of Assyria required of Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. Go on.
Just to the bottom of verse 17.
17, okay,
Yeah.
thanks. And Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasuries of the king's house. At that time Hezekiah stripped the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord and from the doorpost that Hezekiah, king of Judah, had overlaid and gave it to the king of Assyria. And the king of Assyria sent the Tartan, the Rabsaris, and the Rabshakeh with a great army from Lachish to King Hezekiah in Jerusalem. And they went up and came to Jerusalem. When they arrived, they came and stood by the conduit of the upper pool, which is on the highway to the washer's field.
All right. So, that was the expanded version of what we read in Isaiah. A lot of people think that maybe Isaiah wrote both passages and just filled in the historical details for the historical chronicle in 2 Kings, and the prophetic stuff, the things that really lean more into the things Isaiah's been talking about, he put in his own scroll here. Hard to say, but either way, yeah, we've got two different views of this, and the 2 Kings one was a lot more detailed. So you may remember, we talked a few weeks ago about how Hezekiah tried to buy Assyria off. This is that moment. So, and he basically empties his own treasury, the royal treasury of silver, and the gold that he personally saw to it got re-overlaid on the doors of the temple. He had to take down again, which again has to be the most disappointing thing. I mean, imagine, you're the king and God's been blessing you and you finally accomplished this huge reform in Judah for the God of your forefathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And, you even, you refurbished the temple and it's starting to look like, a little bit like it did in its former glory under Solomon. And now all of a sudden, you got to take it all back down again and send it to this godless, persecuting army that's right on your doorstep. And you have to kind of grovel. I mean, Hezekiah's response, I have sinned. Really? No, he's saying basically, oh no, yeah, you said not to trust Egypt, and I was wrong, I'm sorry. It's rough. It's a terrible position to be in, and I really felt for Hezekiah when I read that. He tried to bribe Assyria away, and Assyria has, oh yes.
I'm sorry, since I haven't been in here the past couple, previously, can you real quickly recap what is the issue with Egypt and why he says he has sinned?
Oh, okay, well.
It seems like he's being cowardly.
Oh, well, yeah,
It seems like
he
he's
kind of is a little bit. He kind of is a little bit, but it's diplomacy too. I mean, Assyria can field a big army,
Right.
much bigger than Judah can. And yeah, once somebody takes out all of your fortified towns and leaves you with the one remaining capital, yeah, you're not in a position of strength. So yeah, you're always going to start with, I'm sorry, even if you didn't do anything wrong. I'm sorry we got in your way. I'm sorry we left up all those walled cities you had to take,
So there was a peace contract between Egypt and Judah?
Yes, there was. Yeah, Judah was counting on Egypt as the other major superpower of the day to protect them against Assyria.
Yeah.
And then Assyria is just like, what do you think about me now? I'm on your doorstep. Where's the Pharaoh? Where's Egypt?
Was it the lack of the Pharaoh to show up, or was it the fact that the Assyrians went down and kicked the butt?
No, well, the fact is Egypt just wasn't strong enough. It was, they were fighting their own wars with Assyria and people in Africa at the same time. They had internal strife throughout all of these dynasties. They're coming and going. Different families are taking over. And Isaiah warned him about that. Isaiah, you may remember this from way back before the pandemic, Isaiah called Egypt a bunch of silent, worthless hippos. Remember? I mean, that's how he referred to them. He told all these kings of Judah, you can't count on Egypt. And now Assyria is like, that's right, you can't. What are you going to do now? Here we are. Where's those Egyptian chariots? We got chariots. Where are the Egyptians?
Yeah.
So basically, Hezekiah's like, okay, I bet on the wrong horse, clearly. And I'm sorry. Please. Yes.
Big picture, what you're saying there, it's interesting how God orchestrates all these things. Had there not been wars with Africa, them fighting Syria, maybe Egypt could have come and would have come.
Yeah.
But the Lord intervenes and puts all of this in action.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, and God is in control of every ounce of this stuff. All the little political issues of these far-flung empires, they mattered because eventually they impacted what happened in Israel at this moment. Yep. So Assyria sends in, now 2 Kings tells us they sent 3 people, 3 high-ranking officials. Those are titles. Tartan is actually a historical title we recognize from non-biblical works. The other 2 only show up in the Bible as far as we know. The Tartan appears to be the guy in charge of the treasury and the tribute. He's the one who shows up and says, hey, you owe us money. No, you owe us more money.
You count.
Yeah, I collected before and I'm here to collect again. And the Rabsaris is sort of your Secretary of the Interior. He's the chief eunuch and he's in charge of internal affairs in Assyria. And then you've got the Rabshakeh, who's sort of like your Secretary of State. He's in charge of the external affairs of the empire. And, when it's an empire, that also means he's the secretary in charge of taking over all the countries around them and annexing them. He's the secretary of all of that. So, yeah, he's the cupbearer. interestingly enough. Because remember, the closest people to the king end up taking the highest offices. Those are the people you can trust. The eunuch is in charge of internal affairs because you can let him go in the king's household. He's not going to cause you the kind of trouble some men would, because he can't, frankly, he's in charge of the household. He's in charge of the internal affairs of state. But the external affairs, that's the cupbearer, the guy who makes sure you're not getting poisoned, the guy who makes sure that when you share a meal with the emissaries from a foreign land, he drinks it first. If he keels over, you don't drink it after him. Nehemiah, interestingly enough, held this position in the Persian Empire. He is the cupbearer to the king. I mean, that puts him somewhere in the Secretary of State role for the Persian Empire. Because the Babylonians and the Persians didn't think, well, it's got to be somebody who's one of us. The Babylonians and the Persians were like, let's put the best guy in for the job. That's why men like Daniel got their positions. So, anyway. But these three, these are the top men. I mean, these are everybody under the king. Basically, prosecuting the war against Egypt, and there's only one thing that stands in their way, and now it's not that big of a thing because Judah just got all of its toys taken away. Judah is down to one city. So they show up at the gates of the city. It's the three of them showing up, but one of them is the guy in charge, and he's the Rabshakeh. And there's a reason why he's in charge. First of all, he's in charge of the external stuff. And secondly, he's clearly good at this. This is his job, and we're going to see he is really good at his job. We are running out of time so fast, that takes me off. All right, so he's the spokesman, and let's see here. We'll go back to Isaiah chapter 36, and somebody read, you know what, I'll read verse 3. It's hard on people to throw the names at them, and I just pull through them. So, and there came out to him Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, who is over the household, and Shebna the secretary, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder. Two of these men we've actually heard about before in Isaiah's prophecy, oddly enough. Eliakim is, he's recently become sort of the second in command in Israel. He's Hezekiah's right-hand man. He wasn't before, but he took Shebna's place. Shebna was basically gilding his nest. He was making sure, he was building himself fine tombs in the nicer graveyards around Jerusalem, basically alongside the kings. He was setting himself up for, a big future for himself and his posterity rather than doing his job. And the Lord said, yeah, Shebna's going down, Eliakim's going to take his place. Isaiah had said that several chapters ago. We briefly mentioned it on our way here. So Eliakim now is up there. He is the Rabshakeh's equal as far as, man-to-man goes. He's the guy who's going to be doing the talking with the Rabshakeh. Shebna's there. He's sort of been demoted now. He's in charge of the internal stuff in the household. And Joah's the recorder. He's the accountant. He's the one who says, Mr. Tartan, we paid you. You say that you want more money, but the fact is, I've got the receipt right here that says that we already bribed you, and you need to stay bought, sir. What's wrong with you? Except that, they're not really going in a position of strength, unfortunately. These are his trusted men. And that also tells you something else. Hezekiah thinks of himself as the king, and he's putting himself on a level with Sennacherib. Sennacherib sends his three best men. Hezekiah sends his three best men. Hezekiah does not come out to talk to the Rabshakeh. Hezekiah is above that. That's how Hezekiah sees himself. I don't need to talk to this guy. This guy is the lackey for another king. I'm going to send him my lackeys. And they will listen to what he has to say and then report back. So, let's talk a little bit about Rabshakeh's tactics. That's going to be the bulk of this discussion. He's good. This guy is good at cowing people and getting his way. And we've got some things to learn from this, actually. Don't be like Rabshakeh, that's not the point. But, this is the way the world treats us a lot, and we got to recognize these tactics. He went straight for what he saw was the weakest point in their defenses. Hezekiah's dad Ahaz worried about that spot. In Isaiah chapter 7, that's where Ahaz is. At the upper conduit on the way to the washer's field. That's where Isaiah goes out to meet him. And Ahaz is freaking out about the defenses of Jerusalem because he knows the water's here. It's outside the walls. We can't water their army and not water us. What are we going to do? And Isaiah's like, you got nothing to worry about. You know, one of these women is going to have a child, and they're going to call him Emmanuel. And by the time he's old enough to eat like solid food, this is not going to be your problem anymore. That's Isaiah chapter 7. That's the original fulfillment of Isaiah 7:14, interestingly enough. And we talked about this again last year now, but Reb Sheka recognized that too. Reb Sheka went right to the chink in his armor. He's just like, you're probably worried about this. Well, that's where we're going to stand. That's where I'm going to be talking about this. Right here where I think you've got a problem. Now, does Hezekiah have the same problem Ahaz did with the water? No, we talked about this before. Hezekiah ran tunnels under the city. He routed that water into town to the pool of Siloam. Everything's going to be fine. Hezekiah was thinking ahead. Probably, maybe Isaiah came over and said, the Lord was thinking you might want to, get your guys, digging under the city for some things here, move some water. I don't know. Maybe Hezekiah's just that smart. Maybe he's gifted that way. But it's interesting that Reb Sheka goes straight to your weakest point to threaten you. There he is, right there, right in the same spot, the site of the Emmanuel prophecy. And he says, well, going on, let's see here, verse 4 is great. And the Reb Sheka said to them, say to Hezekiah, thus says the great king, the king of Assyria, on what do you rest this trust of yours? Do you think that mere words are strategy and power for war? In whom do you now trust that you have rebelled against me? Note some things in here. Reb Sheka does not address Hezekiah as a king. Reb Sheka addresses Hezekiah as an equal. Reb Sheka's like, yeah, you sent your lackeys to talk to me. You tell Hezekiah from me that I'm talking to him like he's on my level. We both have a king over us, and it's my king. It's Sennacherib. Hezekiah is a lackey. Don't, Reb Sheka is already recasting the terms of the debate here. No, I'm not talking to you. You guys go send a message to the guy I'm really talking to. Reb Sheka is smart. Reb Sheka is a genius. So, and you ask him, I'm sorry, who do you trust exactly? And I love that, the beginning of verse 5. Do you think that mere words are strategy and power for war? Reb Sheka is like, if you were a man, you'd send an army out to meet me, not a couple of guys to talk. I got an army. Where's your army? Huh?
Diplomacy?
Yeah. Diplomacy, yeah. And Reb Sheka's laughing about that because he's just like, yeah, diplomacy. Come on. We all know what I'm here for. Come on. If you could take me, you would. But in fact, this is a parley. So, you don't have a position of strength to begin with. He's telling Hezekiah, you've already been in defeat. Moving on. It's funny because, I don't know, in whom do you trust that you have rebelled against me? Verse 6, behold, you are trusting in Egypt, that broken reed of a staff, which will pierce the hand of any man who leans on it. Such is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who trust in him. It's funny, Reb Sheka is telling Hezekiah what Isaiah has been telling kings for generations now. Yeah, you can't trust Egypt. And I wonder if Isaiah heard about this and was just like, well, he's got a point. I've been saying that. You can't trust Egypt. Egypt is not where you should be putting your military faith. This isn't really a socio-political commentary. This is a commentary on who do you trust to keep you safe. It can't be your military allies. It can't be politics. It can't be the guy in charge. It can't be your neighbors. It can't be your political party. It can't be the people who ally with you. It can't be your coworkers. It can't be your family. It can't be your friends. You can't trust any of these merely human beings for security and safety. That's Isaiah's point. You know, you're trusting everything but the one who you should be trusting. And Reb Sheka is going to get there, interestingly enough. Once again, Reb Sheka, it's like he read Isaiah in some of these places, you know. But it's interesting, you know. Reb Sheka is saying, yeah, you lean on Egypt. He's like a broken walking stick who's just going to go right through your hand, you know, when you lean on him too much. Ow, don't do that. Which is funny. Isaiah's the one who said they're worthless. They're silent, worthless hippos, and they're not going to be any help to us when we need them. They are not in a position of strength. And then we find out that Reb Sheka is not all-knowing and is not, you know, completely down with everything here. But it's an interesting tactic nonetheless. Verse 7, but if you say to me, we trust in Yahweh our God, is it not he whose high places and altars Hezekiah has removed, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, you shall worship before this altar? What does Reb Sheka think?
Idols.
Yeah. He's conflating these two things. He's like, you know, you guys are coming out here saying you worship God, but as far as I can tell, Hezekiah has destroyed all the places of worship in Jerusalem. Do you think, is your God going to be okay with that? He doesn't even understand what's really going on internally. He doesn't understand Hezekiah's reforms. He doesn't get that there is one living God. Reb Sheka, you know, is ignorant, like the whole world is ignorant, of who God really is. That he, you know, demands, you know, complete faith, complete obedience, and you know, God insists that you believe the truth, which is that he is the only God, period. All the others are worthless, inventions of men, pointless, you know, images. And Reb Sheka, he doesn't get that. Reb Sheka is just like, I don't know, guys. I don't think you ought to be looking for divine help when you've destroyed every center of worship in Judah. It's just me, but that doesn't seem like a good strategy to me. And who's he talking to here? We're going to find out a little bit later, but, you know, to spoil it slightly, he's not really talking to Hezekiah at this point. He's talking to the people who's listening. All of these people who can hear him talking, and there are a lot of people who can hear and understand this man at this point. He's standing in a good place to get hearers. The congregation along the walls of the people of Jerusalem are listening in. Because they got to see this guy. They're looking through the little holes in the wall, and they're looking over the turrets. Yes?
And isn't he at this time speaking in...
Yes, he is. He is speaking their language. He's speaking Hebrew, and that's going to be addressed later on in this chapter. Yeah, he's talking to them in their own language. The people of Jerusalem themselves saying, so guys, you think it was a good idea to destroy all your places of worship just before you asked God to help you? Because he doesn't understand that that's exactly what God wants, you know, because he's thinking in terms of, you know, the gods in general. You know, you get as many of them on your side as you can. You get as many people sacrificing and worshiping at as many different high places and altars as you can. You know, you stack the deck in your favor by getting all the gods on your side. That's how it works in the ancient world. The Romans played it that way even. You know, the Romans, they wouldn't show up and say, you can't worship your God anymore. They'd say, tell us about your God. Send your priests to Rome. We want him on our side too. We're going to set up a temple to him and we'll do sacrifices to him and you can maintain a whole priesthood in Rome as long as he's backing the emperor. Please do. You know, we want all, you know, is God on our side? All of the gods are on our side. That's how we planned it.
We're gonna make a temple to the unknown God.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's, yeah, the Greeks were really playing it safe, but they're philosophers. They think about things like that. You know, the Romans are more thinking in terms of, you know, we just need as many gods on our side as possible. It's a military thing for the Romans. The Greeks are the ones sitting there going, but what if we don't know about all the gods? You know, that would be a Greek philosopher thing, you know. Anyway, yeah. Well, but the ancient Near East was like this everywhere. The Assyrians are like, you know, the Assyrians are basically saying, yeah, if you're not going to get all the gods on your side, you don't really stand a chance. Oh, and I've got more to say about that too. So, basically Rabshakeh is saying only an idiot would remove the protection of the gods, and that's what Hezekiah did. And then Rabshakeh says, I know how weak you really are. I know how bad things really are, militarily speaking, for you. Verse 8, come now, make a wager with my master, the king of Assyria. I'll give you 2,000 horses. All you have to do is put riders on them. I will give you 2,000 horses that you can ride into battle against us. All you got to do is show me 2,000 people who can sit on horses. And he knows Hezekiah can't do that. There aren't 2,000 horsemen in Judah's army at this point. Everybody in Judah's army is behind the city wall of Jerusalem. Listening right now, actually, going, oh my gosh. What do they have for horsemen? Probably hundreds, there's no way they have thousands. And, Assyria, at this point, they can field an army of hundreds of thousands of people. Rabshakeh isn't there with the full army of Assyria. He's there with an expeditionary force. They're just laying the groundwork to take out Egypt once and for all. That's the only reason they're there. He's not even showed up with the full force of Assyria. And he's like, come on, you guys, you got nothing. How then can you repulse a single captain among the least of my master's servants when you trust in Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? Yeah, and he's got a point, right? And then he kind of loops back around to the whole God thing. Verse 10, moreover, is it without the Lord that I have come up against this land to destroy it? The Lord said to me, go up against this land and destroy it. And that's got to play on some fears with these people, because the fact is, Israel, anybody who knows their history knows that sometimes God does say things like that. God has actually done that to Israel on occasion. And so, again, he's just playing right into this. Rabshakeh is like, you guys are trusting in your God to protect you, but did you think I came here without your God? Your God told me to come wipe you out. Again, be the person behind the wall listening to this. Oh my gosh. Then, this is the moment at which, then, Hezekiah's envoys look around and realize, we've got an audience, everybody's here, and they're all listening, and they're all hearing this, and it's not good. Then Eliakim, Shebna, and Joash said to the Rabshakeh, please speak to your servants in Aramaic. We understand it. Aramaic is the language of the Assyrian Empire. We speak the diplomatic, universal language of the ancient Near East. Why don't you talk to us in that language? And then, they're tripping over themselves. They're giving it away. They're like, do not speak to us in the language of Judah, within the hearing of the people who are on the wall. They're asking him, come on, in good faith, you would never do, if you were in our shoes, you would never do this. Rabshakeh doesn't care about any of this stuff. It's funny that Eliakim thinks he does. These guys are like, come on, you're not being fair. That's not fair. Rabshakeh, you're just going to incite all these people against us. Rabshakeh's like, oh, are you just figuring that out? But the Rabshakeh said, verse 12, has my master sent me to speak these words to your master and to you, and not to the men sitting on the wall who are doomed with you to eat their own dung and drink their own urine? He just goes straight to the heart of it now. You want a siege? You want to see what's going to happen? When I cut off everybody moving in and out of this city, and you guys are just trapped within the walls like rats, should I not talk to them? Should I not tell them what they're in for? Is it fair to them not to warn them of what your master is doing to them by not surrendering? Because this is their future. They're not going to have anything to eat. They're not going to have anything to drink. They're going to have to go through the horrors of the worst siege in history. Right here, right now. You don't want to tell them? I'll tell them. And he just keeps on amping it up. Verse 13, then the Rabshakeh stood and called out in a loud voice in the language of Judah, "Hear the words of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus says the king, do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you. Do not let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord by saying, the Lord will surely deliver us. This city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for thus says the king of Assyria, make your peace with me and come out to me. Then each one of you will eat of his own vine, and each one of his own fig tree, and each one of you will drink the water of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and wine, and a land of bread and vineyards." Wow.
That sounds so bad.
Yeah, well, he's dialing it up at first, saying, hey, you listen to Hezekiah, it's going to be terrible, and you're going to suffer. But Hezekiah can't deliver you, but my king can. Sennacherib can save you. Sennacherib wants you to be happy here. You'll be able to live in your own property and farm it, and you'll be able to keep your own stuff, and everything will be great. And when we move you, and we will, when we forcibly remove you from this place and take you someplace else, it'll be just as nice as this one. Trust us. You'll have your own place there too, and it's going to be beautiful, just like this is. And you'll be able to farm it in peace and happiness, and you will get everything you've got here. And so what is your problem? Yes?
Sounds like the commercials on TV, political ads.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, I know. Reb Sheka, yeah, hit you with the fear and uncertainty, and then turn around and go, but if you vote for my candidate, it'll be great. Trust us. We've got this under control. We might take something away from you, but we're going to give you something just as nice in return. Come on. Wow. I mean, oh boy, we're out of time, and it just kills me. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you'll be happy. You'll be happy here, and we'll move you, and you'll be happy there. And then he just turns it one more time to God, real quick, and then we'll close. Beware lest Hezekiah mislead you, verse 18, by saying, the Lord will deliver us. Has any of the gods of the nations delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim? These are the gods of Syria. Syria, not Assyria. The kingdom northeast of Israel. Assyria has trumped them, just wiped them out, and their gods did not save them. And then he goes on. Have they delivered Samaria out of my hand? That's the northern kingdom. That's Israel. They're gone now, remember. They have been removed. They have been taken away. Samaria wasn't saved. Don't they share a God with you? Didn't I hear that somewhere? God didn't save them. Who among all the gods of these lands have delivered their lands out of my hand, that Yahweh should deliver Jerusalem out of my hand? They were silent and answered him not a word. But the king's command was, do not answer him. The only smart thing maybe that happened here. Then our three came to Hezekiah with their clothes torn and told him the words of Rabshakeh. It worked. They showed up at Hezekiah's door and they said, we are done for. It's the end, man. It's bad. Yeah, they're showing up in mourning already. It's over. Wow. The only real thing I want to wrap up with here is recognize these tactics. These are the tactics the world uses on us all the time. Your God can't save you. If we take something away from you, we'll give it back. You can be happy. What's your problem? Nobody else has complained about this, and nobody else has turned against us and gotten through this. You don't have any real power. You don't have any real significance. Why don't you just knuckle under? You'll be happy, and it will be okay. Your gods aren't real and can't save you, so just give in. That's what the world is telling us all the time. It's so loud this week, I almost can't hear anything else. This particular week in our country. That's all I hear, it seems like. Why do you keep fighting what is right in front of you? Because people like Isaiah would tell me to, that's why. Because my trust is not in princes. I don't trust in chariots. I don't trust in horses. I don't trust vaccines. I don't trust presidents. I don't trust congressmen. I don't trust big businesses. I don't trust Black Lives Matter. I don't trust any political movement. I don't trust anybody but the God of Israel, the living God. That is the message of this chapter. Any questions? Because we got to wrap it up. Yes?
Quick comment though about the tactics that Rabbi is making, is that the siege is neither really good for either side. Obviously one side's more in peril than the other, but it's not fun for anybody. But the quickest way to end a siege is to either have a guy or a group on the inside. The biggest danger to a city under siege is, aside from starvation, is a revolt from the people or a Trojan horse, if you will, whatever that may be.
That's true.
And he's inciting a Trojan horse, whether it be addressing the people, a person, or the entire, a section.
Yeah, he may not have anybody in Jerusalem, but he's living in their heads rent-free now because of what he said.
Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah. Yep.
It's just,
And that's how the world operates. Don't let them live in your head.
Yeah. What Trojan horses are they putting into your heart?
Yeah. All right, we got to close real quick. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for church. We thank you for your word. Lord, give us the strength and the courage and the confidence in you to stand up to the wiles of the devil. In Jesus' name, amen.